Hi, it's Rabbi Jeremy from Machar, and this is our Hanukkah candle lighting video for the fifth night of Hanukkah in 2025. And I want to kind of take a step back from all of the kind of little smaller pieces of things that we've talked about over the last few days about Hanukkah. How do we light candles? The role of women during Hanukkah in more traditional Jewish contexts, and why the stories kind of back up that idea of women having a kind of elevated role in the overall story and in practices around Hanukkah. Some of the other things we've talked about. And I wanted to take a moment to step back and talk about some of the whys, and not the historical why of the Maccabean revolt, which I guess we'll get to someday if we feel like it's interesting, although there's plenty of places where you can learn about that. Not so much interested in that why, but the why do this? Like, why celebrate Hanukkah? Particularly, why celebrate Hanukkah as humanistic Jews? Because part of the background of the story is actually not very friendly in a lot of ways to a more liberal Jewish approach, whether you're humanistic or reform or conservative or renewal or reconstructionist. Or the Hanukkah story is not necessarily one that is friendly to more liberal approaches, because the Maccabees were not themselves friendly to liberal approaches. And in fact, there was a historian, Elias Bickerman, who actually kind of advanced the theory that essentially the Maccabean revolt is more a story of conflict between two Jewish groups, one reforming, and he was a member of the Reform movement, so one reforming or reformish, and one more traditional. And the Maccabees were the more traditional, and it was the Maccabees' enemies who were very much akin to, in Bickerman's eyes, Reform Jews and Reform Judaism. So, if that's the case, historically, why do we mark this holiday? Particularly, why, as humanistic Jews, would we mark this holiday that celebrates the accomplishments of religious fundamentalists, which is kind of what the Maccabees were? It's not quite so clean cut as that, but they are on the very right end of religious Jewish practice for their time. So, why in the world would we want to celebrate this holiday? And there are a number of different reasons that people advance, right? So, one of them is the lighting of candles really just kind of connects up to the winter solstice and wanting a brighter, literally brighter world. If you live in the northern hemisphere, it gets dark earlier, right? In Maryland, where I am, in the DC area, where Machar as a congregation is, it's dark at 4:30 right now. And wouldn't it be great to have some light? So lots of winter holidays kind of center around the idea of more light, whether you're thinking about Diwali or you're thinking about Hanukkah or you're thinking about traditional practices around Christmas, right? A Yule log and decorations and lights and those kinds of things. A lot of winter holidays have this element to them. So maybe it's just dark and you want to light more light, and then we add layers on top of it. But I think there's another purposeful reason to mark Hanukkah, and it's in the name. So Hanukkah comes out of a Hebrew root that is really about dedication. So we talk about Hanukkah as meaning rededication, like rededication of the temple, and that's a fair translation. But the word itself, the root itself, has a lot of different meanings. And one of the meanings that it takes on is with a permutation of it into a noun. This noun is chinuch. Chinuch is education. So, Sefer HaChinuch is a medieval period Jewish text that is focuses on teaching the commandments and focuses on teaching. And chinuch is understood as sort of the entry level kind of Jewish education. So Hanukkah is connected up to this idea of dedication and rededication and of education, and gives us another reason for celebrating the holiday is recognizing the importance of dedicating ourselves to something. Now, do you dedicate yourself to the rededication of the temple? As humanistic Jews, no. That's not a thing that we're really interested in, but it's still one of any number of possible understandings that we are doing this in order to have a regular kind of dedication to whatever our values are. Another piece of it is, look, you can read the books of Maccabees. Um, the books of Maccabees are apocryphal texts originally written in Greek, translated into English. You can find them on the internet. You can find them in bookstores. You can find them in any Bible that also has an apocrypha. Um, the books of the Maccabees talk about the idea of divine intervention in these events. But from a humanistic perspective, we look at the history of the Maccabean revolt and we see that the extraordinary thing about it is that people managed to do this, that there's people power at work here. And from a humanistic perspective, recognizing the importance of people power is kind of our thing, right? That we are responsible for what we do in the world. We are responsible for making change in the world because we can't count on change coming from elsewhere, right? We sometimes have, you'll sometimes see people talk about politics and they'll say things like, no one is coming to save us. And in a way, that's a depressing message. No one is going to come in and save us. On the other hand, no one's going to save us. It's us. We have to want it and we have to work for it. And Hanukkah really kind of puts that on display. It is a story of people saying, I don't like this anymore and I don't want this. And what do I do to fix it? So the idea of dedicating yourself to a cause and the idea of recognizing people power is a pretty powerful one, even if Hanukkah is in its background working from a very fundamentalist religious perspective in how we got it. That's true, but Judaism mostly left that perspective behind anyway, because it turns out that the people who were the religious fundamentalists, the Maccabees, turned out to be as corruptible as anybody else. And so we don't necessarily have to accept the idea that they were somehow morally superior or any of that to be able to find some meaning in celebrating Hanukkah as an example of what we can actually do when we really put human effort into the equation and our own efforts into the equation. And so, having said that, it is also time to light Hanukkah candles on our menorahs. If you have your menorah and you're going to light with me, you're welcome to do so. If not, I'm going to have mine on the screen. Um, Still using that electric lighter, so it still takes a moment to get the shamash lit so that I can then light the other candles. And here we are. Let me get this turned so that it's facing the right direction for you. And you can see it is night 5, and so I've got the shamash and 5 other candles ready to go. And because it is the 5th night and we light generally from left to right, right? Because we're lighting the newest one first. We'll start here, and with humanistic blessing that we most often use at Machar, Nivarech et haor ba'olam, Nivarech et haor ba'adam, Nivarech et haor shel Hanukkah. Let us bless the light in the world. Let us bless the light in humanity. Let us bless the light of Hanukkah. And that is our Hanukkah menorah lighting for the 5th night of Hanukkah in 2025. Chag Sameach.